This tank is a T-92. This is an American Tier 8 light tank. The map is Siegfried Line. This is an assault defend game, and I'm on the defending team. Now, the first thing that I do is I go out to the ridge, midfield, and I spot as many tanks as possible. If you notice that one of my allies in the chat was saying, hold them out. And what he meant was, don't let the enemy cross the 6th column. You know, what you do is you go out as far as you can. I'll go to that position. You go out to a position like this. You spot the enemy tanks, and you have your allies all do the same thing. You set up a defensive line over here. And then you shoot at those tanks. And because they're out in the open, they can't do anything. They can't hide. They're out in the open. You can get a couple shots on them. And all you got to do is reverse back a little bit and get behind a hill when you want to reload or get behind one of these structures. You do it in the south and you do it in the north. Another ally is arguing with him saying, oh, you're saying rush out and die. It's not a rush out and die thing. They're the ones that are going to die. But unfortunately, people haven't learned to do it. So the strategy that I use, look at how many people I spotted. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the south. There's going to be 2 SPGs, which means there's probably going to be 6 in the north. So I go out, spot, turn around, and come back. And then what we got to do is we got to kill all those tanks that were spotted. That's the second step. Now, ideally, you want to be in this position where this M41 Bulldog is, against the red line, so that when all these tanks start coming into this position right over here, you want to be where the M41 is, shooting across and hitting them in the side armor. I have some allies out here in the field, so my plan is to spot enemy tanks, let my allies do as much damage as possible. Go in for another spotting run, find a bush to snipe from, slow those tanks down. I got 964 spotting damage on that M41. He had 36 hit points left, and I took him out of the game. Now you'll notice that there's an object 704 out in the field. He's probably going to stay out in the field. So it's safe for me to go where the M46 Patton is. However, I've also been using this midfield position to snipe on enemy tanks. So in some of my previous videos, you're going to see that I go to the position where the M46 is, snipe across to these guys over here, but you don't have to do it. You can do it from a midfield position, such as where I am right now. And let the M46 play in that position. If there's 2 people there, it might be a little bit confusing. As long as you can get shots on those tanks, take them out of the game. They're usually afraid to go into town. Because they're afraid to go into town, you're usually going to be able to get a lot of shots on them. Once the Object 704, okay, the Object 704 was just taken out of the game by the SPG. And notice that I noticed it immediately because I have good situational awareness. I read the messages, I watch the mini-map, I have a big mini-map. As soon as he was taken out of the game, I knew that the field was open. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take shots on these tanks on their rear from as far away as possible so they don't spot me, and I'm going to look for the enemy SPG. So normally what you're going to do is you're going to come up to this position over here. Notice that I can turn around and I can shoot at those tanks. Put them in a panic mode. Because I didn't go far enough, you notice one of my allies did come with me, the T-54. I didn't go far enough, so I was spotted. However, we can deal with this. We have SPGs that we can go after. So we got one SPG was taken out of the game. Now we can set up anywhere we want. I can set up anywhere along this back field, along this red line. I can go all the way down over to here where the road is, and all of the enemy tanks over there are reachable from this position. I can shoot at like 7 or 8 enemy tanks. I saw that my ally was driving in front of me, so I withheld my fire, so I did not shoot at him. Now, obviously, I'm spotted. I don't know how I got spotted. It doesn't make sense. Maybe I was at the end of my 8 seconds for spotting. As soon as those tanks get spotted, I'm going to fire at them. I do like to use the auto aim. As long as it penetrates, I use it. When I stop getting effective use out of it, I use a sniper mode. I may have killed an unspotted tank. The enemy SPG was killed. Now, because I have not been penetrating using the auto aim, I'm going to go into the manual sniper mode. Scores 12-3. It was an easy win. The enemy just got at the entrance to the town and no further. I did 2,500 damage so far, and I'm going to get 3 kills. I already got 3 kills. Got 1,100 spotting damage. Scores 14-3. This is a textbook game. This is how you play this map. It's easier to do this technique from the south. From the north, it's a little bit more difficult. My allies are describing the game as a feeding frenzy. Okay, so that's the game, 15-3. This tank is a E-25. This is a German Tier 7 tank destroyer. The map is Siegfried Line. This is an assault defend game. I'm on the defending team. I am going to get 5 kills in this game, and we're going to flank the enemy. So the first thing that I do is I try to spot as many enemy tanks as possible. Ideally, you want your whole team to come with you, and you want your team to come out to this position. You spot the enemy tanks out in the field, and you have your allies line up on these ridges and shoot them in the field before they can make it to town. However, people don't do that. If you watch my games, and you know a couple of years ago I had a game with an FCM 50T where we did it and the whole team came with me and we had an easy win. But people don't play that style, so it's a little bit more difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spot for my team, spot all these tanks, try not to take any damage, of course. And then when you do your spotting run, you're going to go over that hill, and then you head back to your backfield. Now, that M4, you can see him on the mini-map. He's the one that I need to kill first, because he is in a position that I want to take. You want to be against the red line, so you have more map control. So we got to get rid of that M4, however we do it. Whether my artillery does it or my teammates do it is irrelevant, as long as that guy dies. Now, you notice that there was a P-43 that got killed. We got this Jagdpanzer who's taken some damage. Now, you'll notice that what I did was I fired my gun and I reversed, and then I fired my gun again. And the reason why I do that is to avoid incoming fire. Because I am spotted, the artillery, if he aims at me and I fire and I move and I fire and I move, then anybody that's firing at me, whether it's artillery or another player in the game, it increases the chance that they miss. You notice I'm doing it again. I'm firing and I'm moving. And with Artie, it's ideally you want to move side to side, but you don't always have that choice. Now, because I was spotted, I usually start counting to 10. I try to estimate how many seconds I can count. Find a good spotting position. Here's an excellent spotting position right here. We are getting more hits on that M4. I don't like the fact that he's in that position. However, if you look at the minimap, you're going to notice that the only enemies on the south are the M4 and the T67. So we've actually got good map control in the south, but I want better map control. Now, one of the things you're also going to notice is that there's an OI in the north who's all by himself, and most of the enemy team is also in the north. And that OI could be a threat to my team, but he's also easy to take out. He's in a very vulnerable position. So you can see I'm headed towards the town area. People say that this is an overpowered tank, but it's not really true. I like to describe it as a well-designed tank. So the OI was just killed, which means there's no need for me to go out into the field to go after him. This is a very well-designed tank. It's not really overpowered. It doesn't have a killer gun. You know, it's got good speed, it's got a good gun, it's got good camo, everything is good on it. Now you notice that there's a T-67 who was spotted in the south. I do use 2 repair kits, so it was easy for me to get out of that situation, and I still have another repair kit. So obviously you'll notice that I targeted both tanks. First I did the T-34-1 and it said ready to fire, and then I had noticed that the Sherman had lower hit points, so I switched and I fired at the other tank. Because this tank spins around a lot, if you come to a stop, it might spin. If you get hit, it might spin. So you might have to use the auto aim for your first shot more often than with another tank. It really helps your gun control if you use the auto aim. Unfortunately, I missed that shot. That should not have missed. Who knows why that missed? So as you can see, the enemy was playing, should not have allowed me to do that, but he did. I got 1,300 damage, 470 spotting damage. Score is 9-9. Now, the more I head in the direction that I'm heading, the harder it is for that Scorpion to hit me. Obviously, he was able to hit me, but I went to the point where he was no longer able to hit me again. Now, obviously, there is a Skoda. Let's see if we can see him. Well, there he is, and you can see that that the enemy is probably aiming towards me. So what you want to do is you want that Skoda to take shots and let him do the damage, let him get the kills. Just sit here and wait. Let that Skoda go in. And we're not doing this because we want the Skoda to die. We're doing this because we want to confuse the Scorpion. The Scorpion's pointing his gun in the wrong direction. So it looked like it worked. The Skoda may have gotten hit by a tank from the south, but he was able to do a little bit of damage on that Scorpion. Okay, the score is 10-10. I've got 1,600 damage. Going to head to the red line. Right now we're doing this to avoid artillery. We want to move perpendicular to artillery and do some zigzagging. It makes it more difficult for the enemy artillery to aim at our tank. The artillery knows that we're going to cross over at certain spaces, such as that part of the Dragon's Teeth. So if you have a bigger tank, you might want to go over a different part of the Dragon's Teeth where the SPG can't anticipate. Now at this point you have a choice to make. The score is 10-10. I'm probably not spotted. I'm low on hit points. Ideally, I want my allies to take this tank out of the game. So let's look at the mini-map. We see that we have an allied OI in town and an allied Leopard. They're not in firing range. And we have an allied Panther M10. The Panther is at the edge of his firing range for that SPG. And then we have our allied SPG. So I wasn't spotted. If you notice on the mini-map, the M4 was at the edge of my spotting range, so it was unlikely that he was going to spot me. You don't want to be spotted, because if you're spotted, it increases the chance that you're going to die. You notice I stopped immediately. Not only did I stop immediately, but I started reversing. And the reason why I started reversing is because I want to increase the distance to make it more difficult for him to spot me. Unfortunately, I was spotted. But I'm also firing my gun as I'm reversing. I did move forward at the last second to try and trick the enemy SPG. However, it's very difficult to do when you're moving forward and away. It's a better tactic when you're moving perpendicular. Okay, so I got 1,800 damage. I was able to get into the enemy's rear flank. I got 5 kills. Let's see if we got more of this game. Score is 12-12. Okay, that's the end of the game for me. This tank is the M4190 GF. It is, I don't know if it's an American or a German tank. I think it's a German Tier 8 light tank. The map is Siegfried Line. This is an assault defend game, and I'm on the assaulting team. Now, the strategy you want to use if you're a fast tank is you want to go all the way as far as you can to the red line, which is the 0 column. You can look on the mini-map on the other side of the lakes, and you want to shoot at the side of the enemy tanks or at the rear of the enemy tanks. Spot the SPGs that are at the #1 spawn for the red team. That's the ideal tactic that you want to use. And sometimes you're going to make it, sometimes you're going to, well, it's easy to get to the red line. But the problem is when you start firing your gun, at some point you're going to get spotted. So this is going to show you one of my attempts to get there. I'm going to show you how I do it. So first of all, we have a threat. We've got the M41 over here, and we've got the Challenger. They both need to be taken out of the game. They're going to prevent me. Basically, I want to go to where the Challenger is. So we got to kill these 2 tanks and deceive the enemy so they don't know what the tactic is that we're using. Now we know that there's an AMX 1357 out there because he hit me. Took a lot of shots, and that's the danger of not being unspotted. You know, I should have become unspotted. Let your allies go in and soften them up. You know, with this tank, you're more of a spotting role and secondary as a sniping role. Okay, so we got some shots on this Challenger. We got to spot these tanks, let our allies do the damage from a distance. Now you notice that the enemy M41, he's running around the lake. Okay, so the Challenger's out of the game, and the M41 is retreating. So basically what we're going to do is go to the position that he's leaving. I don't know how I got spotted. It really doesn't make that much sense. Okay, so now I'm going to head to the red line to be as far away from the enemy as possible. And we're going to the position that the M41 just abandoned. If over here, if you're in this position, you know, look at the mini-map. If you see tanks that you can shoot at, fire at them. But remember that because of the way the land is shaped, you have to be in a high position. It's not a flat field. So you'll notice that I was able to get into this position. The AMX 1357, has he been spotted? I'm not sure. Come over here, start looking for targets. And look where I am on the mini-map. I'm in the J0 area. Now, one of the issues that we have here is that the enemy is within the town. My allies in the south are in the field. So the enemy team is afraid to come out from the town. This technique is going to work ideally when your allies enter the town. But my allies did not enter the town. They're in the field. So the enemy is afraid to come out. Obviously, we got this T25/2 who decided to come out. And I can easily take shots at him. I do need to move because he became unspotted because there's trees between us and him. So I had to move to respot him. I had to move so that there were not trees in between us. So he's out of the game. Now we have an issue. We can look at the minimap. There's still a lot of tanks in the game. There might be a lot of enemy tanks that are not spotted yet. But the issue is that we don't have any targets to shoot at. So we have to either find them, because our allies are not going to find them. Our allies are either slow tanks or they have the view range is not that high. I have coated optics. I don't have the binocs on this tank in this game. However, because it was on sale this week, I do have it on this tank now. So I have an extended view range. These tanks might not come out. So we can't shoot at anything, so why be here? We have to do something about this. Okay, we spotted a tank. Easy target. Reverse to double bush. Wasn't spotted. I don't know how I missed that shot. Missed so many shots nowadays. Got to go forward to respot him. He's out of the game. Okay, so you see over there, there's a tank within that gap. However, you can't expect that tank to just sit there and sit in that gap. It's, you know, if you sit here and wait forever, he's going to go in and out, and he knows that there's a gap there, and he knows that I'm firing at him. So he's going to avoid that gap. You're only going to get him. You're only going to get him if your ally, the IS-3, pushes him back through the gap. So I made the mistake in that I stayed in this position. I didn't do counter arty, which means move into a separate position. For counter artery, you would reverse. You don't have to reverse that far, or go to another bush to spot in, or go a little bit to the left, etc. So I was taken out. I did 900 damage, 772 spotting damage, 2 kills. But the important thing is I showed you the technique that you use to get to the rear flank, and you can use it in your games. This tank is a Sheridan. This is an American Tier 10 light tank, and the map is Cliff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some rear flanking, try to get behind enemy lines. The reason why you do this is because you want to hit them in the rear on their softer armor. You want to create some havoc. You want the enemy to turn their guns around so they're not pointed at your allies. They're pointing in the wrong direction, etc. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And there's the tactic, and there's the place and the time. And you have to watch the mini-map and have good situational awareness. It's too bad I missed that shot. I like to come over here and spot. It's easier to spot from the south. Right now I'm waiting, obviously, to reload. I like to spot and snipe and try and do some sniping damage. When you're a newer player, you just want to learn to do the spotting first. But once you get better and you know how to do the spotting, you want to add the sniping into the game. Oh, it's too bad I missed. In terms of the Sheridan, I'm not that happy with it as a tank. I prefer the German Tier 10 tank. I just got it. I don't remember what it's called, the Rheinmetall or something like that. I think it's a better tank to play. I've only played a few games in it, though. And with the Sheridan, as soon as I get my Object 260, I have to complete LT-15. As soon as I complete it, I'm going to get rid of this tank and play the T-49, which is a Tier 9 tank, or I just might not play in American light tanks anymore. Now, you notice that I was able to come up to this bush, and the enemy didn't spot me. And I'm looking at the mini-map, and it looked like I'd be able to make it, because the enemy tanks are either around the corner or behind a house or too far away. And being in this position is pretty powerful. I can spot that Leopard PTA all the way in the back. I could go after that M4A1. He's got 695 hit points. I got a gun that does like 750 damage. I might be able to take him out of the game. And what is this team going to do? Look, his gun is pointing away from me. So I took him out of the game. As soon as I get past this point, I've got bushes to cover me. And I just keep on driving around. And now I'm perfectly safe. I only had to get to where the IS-3 is, and I was safe from enemy fire, and right now I'm unspotted. So I just wanted to show you that maneuver, to show you that it is possible to go over through the middle and come around and hit the enemy when they least expect it. This tank is the AMX 1390. This is a French Tier 9 light tank, and the map is Cliff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get behind enemy lines. I'm going to flank them, and it's going to help my team win the game. Actually, I don't know if we're going to win the game. Well, let's see. We're going to do really good. Now, there's lots of ways to get behind the enemy, and you have to gauge the map, gauge what's going on, look for the right opportunity, look for the right opening, and then take advantage of it. And the enemy is going to leave a part of the map undefended, which is going to allow me to take advantage of that hole. Now, you'll notice that I came to this position, and the reason why I came to this position is because you can snipe at the tanks. Look on the mini-map. You can snipe at the tanks that are going across this gap over here, such as this Progetto. You just have to reverse a little bit to defend yourself. You fire a couple rounds with your autoloader, and you repeat. Unfortunately, he did hit me. Okay, so this position you can use to snipe on tanks that are over there. You do need your allies to spot for you. But what you're going to notice is that over here in this position, we have a Lorraine 40T, WZ-111, and a Leopard, also in various spotting positions and sniping positions. But what they're doing is they're showing that the enemy is not in this location. And that's a huge problem from the enemy, because there's a way that you can go around there, spot the enemy base, spot enemy tanks without being detected. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So when I saw that opening, I took advantage of it. Obviously, I do have to wait to reload. Looking for another gap to see if I can fire some more shots at these tanks. Got one more chance if we can spot that Conqueror, but he's outside of the spotting range. So I noticed that the enemy didn't come to this side of the map. And I'm going to ride through, and I'm going to spot the enemy base. Now, you notice where the Lorraine is? He's not in the ultimate perfect position. He really wants to be a little bit more to the left. You don't want to be proximity spotted by enemy tanks over here, but you want to be to the left. You want to take advantage of any bushes that are here. You want to be far away because your allies are doing the spotting and you're doing the sniping. So you want to be further to the left. I'm going to the left of him so he doesn't accidentally shoot me. Then I'm swinging back, wasn't spotted, and I pull into the spotting bush right over here and turn on those binocs. And look at that. I can spot that SU tank. The enemy SPG was killed. We got an STRV that I could shoot at him. I got 629 spotting damage, 890 spotting damage on this tank. He cannot hide. He thinks he's hiding, but he's not. There he is. He's out of the game. And if I want to, I could drive down this slope, go around this way and get behind the enemy, go around that way, get behind the enemy, rush all the way to the back, rush onto the enemy camp, whatever I want to do. You'll notice that I'm reloading my ammunition, which means I intend to fire my gun. As soon as I spotted that SPG, I stopped moving, even though it's in an awkward position. Now, I get the gun loaded on him because if I get spotted, I'm going to fire my gun. But ideally, I want one of my allies to take him out of the game. There it is. Obviously, I'm not loaded, so I can't fire anyway. But he was taken out of the game. I noticed in the the stats above the map that he was taken out of the game. Now we got a Type 4 Heavy. So I got 2 damaging hits on the Type 4 Heavy. You notice I'm staying as far to the left as possible because I don't want to be spotted by that Sheridan. But I want to be able to shoot at him. I want to be able to shoot at his allies. I want to be able to keep him spotted. And he's in a position where he doesn't know what to do. The reason why I'm missing is because there is a little bit of a hill, and I need to be firing at his turret, and I'm aiming at his hull. So as I pulled forward, I noticed that he was in a hull down position, which is why I was missing my shots. And I decided to elevate my tank a little bit, but it's really irrelevant. Got to be very careful not to hit my allies. I believe he's a good player. I think that Sheridan is a good player. He just got himself stuck in a bad position. The score is 12-4. Now, this is a type of thing normally you'll hear me say, don't get on the enemy cap. There's obviously an exception. You get on the enemy cap when you want the enemy to return to their base. So that's why I'm getting on the cap. There's 2 enemy tanks out there far away. Now there's only 1. In order for him to come back to the base, he has to drive through 6 allied tanks to get there. So there's a low chance of success for him to return to the base. So I'm going to sit here, keep that base running, keep him to think, oh, I got to go back and reset. There's no way I'm going to go out and, well, I could probably go out and kill him, but my allies are going to take care of him. And he's out of the game. So that was 1,200 damage, 1,300 spotting damage, and I got 2 kills, and you can see how I was able to help my team win the game, even though unfortunately it didn't give me a lot of damage or spotting damage, but the maneuver definitely works when you take advantage of it. This tank is a WZ-131. This is a Chinese Tier 7 light tank, and the map is Cliff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get behind the enemy. I'm going to try and flank the enemy, and I'm going to show you how I did it on this particular game. There's many different ways to do it. There's about 4 techniques that I came up with for this particular map per spawn. I just had an idea for another one. Okay, so what I usually like to do is I usually like to come out here, be as fast as possible, spot a bunch of enemy tanks, but not only spot tanks, I like to try and snipe, get some shots in and do some damage to some unsuspecting tanks. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to come over to this bush right over here, and I wanted to see if I could spot any tanks that were coming across. However, this enemy Type 62 is coming in my direction. So I had to reverse. I had to come up with a different strategy. You'll notice that there's a lot of enemy tanks in front of us, 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 2 enemy SPGs. There's 2 enemies in the west. So there's 3 tanks that have not been spotted yet in the game. I am a very lightly armored tank, so I really don't want to engage in close combat. And this is somewhat of a lower tier game. I am a tier 7 in a tier 6-7 game. Now you notice that the SU-100M1, he is a turretless tank destroyer. His gun is going to be pointing south, which means that his rear is going to be pointing north, and it's going to be undefended. So I can get right in there, and I can shoot at him. Looking for a good position to sit in. I was trying to track him so he doesn't move around. So you notice I had to reverse a little bit because this tank was shooting at me. The reason why I reversed is because I'm trying to get under his gun depression so that he won't be able to shoot back at me unless he does something crazy. Now, people always talk about why to use the auto-aim. That's an example where I was using the auto-aim to fire at the Su-100M1, and I killed him, but I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at this other tank. So that's a method that you use the auto-aim to kill a tank while you're watching somebody else. Fortunately, I got a little bit of a long reload on this tank, but he's out of the game. Now, remember we were counting tanks before, so let's get back into counting tanks, and let's see what happens. There's 3 dead enemy tanks. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus the 3 dead, which is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 13 tanks that we know what happened to them. There's 2 tanks that are unspotted. And I do this while I'm playing. He's actually quite easy to take out of the game, so don't really worry about this guy. Yeah, he's out of the game. So we found another tank, which is the M44. And when I say talk about unspotted tanks, I don't include the SPG, because the SPGs tend to sit in one location. They're not a direct threat. You'll notice that I'm zigzagging, and I'm staying as far to the left of the map as possible, and I'm looking for the SPGs. I was actually surprised that I did not find the M44. I thought he was going to be right here. But I'm in a very safe position right here. My allies are advancing. I've got 2 kills. Now from over here, we're going to look for enemy tanks to shoot at. We know that there's an M44 that's going to be very close. You notice that that Firefly is not looking at me. So I spotted the M44. As soon as I spotted him, I reversed because I want my allies to do the damage. And I'm going to wait to see if my allies kill him. And if he becomes unspotted, I will go and spot him again. So it looks like he became unspotted. I'm using a different technique to elevate my gun. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to shoot at him. I was trying to line up a shot exposing my tank the least amount as possible, but unfortunately it didn't work. So he's out of the game. However, I was spotted. Tanks are shooting at me. Again, I'm a spotter, so I want my allies to take as many shots as possible, and I'm only going to shoot at tanks that are not a threat to me. It's my responsibility to spot that guy for my team. We got a Cromwell. I'm really worried about this Cromwell, so I'm going to reverse and get as far away from him as possible. And you'll notice that there's a couple hull down positions, like this one right here, that I can sneak in to try to avoid that Cromwell and hope that my allies can help me, but it doesn't look like the allies are going to be able to help me in this situation. Now, what I did in this position, you can rewind and watch it. When he's coming around, I wanted to go past him, and there's 2 ways to go around him. One is I could have headed that way, and the other way is I could have headed this way. And he smartly rammed into me. I tried to avoid it as much as possible. But the point that I'm making is that if I had gone that way, it would have been easier for him to track me with his gun because of the direction that he was moving and the way that I was moving. If I were driving this way, I would have gotten behind him while his gun was pointing in the other direction. And unless he does a handbrake turn, I would have been opposite the direction that his gun was firing. If I had gone that way to try and go around him, he would only have to turn his gun quarter turn around, but if I go this way, he has to do a half turn. So that's why the direction that I was making was the smarter decision, but fortunately for him, he was able to ram me. Okay, so the score is 9-6. I did 900 damage, 1,400 spotting damage. I showed you how I gauge when to do the reverse flank and what the safe location is. Normally, tanks like this Cromwell are not going to come looking for you, especially if they're on low health. They're not going to come looking for you. Okay, so let's move on. This tank is a WZ-131. This is a Chinese Tier 7 light tank. The map is mines. I'm going to show you a technique that I use in these games. What we're going to do is first we're going to spot enemy tanks that are heading into the game. Because people aren't ready for this yet, we don't usually do a lot of damage, but if our allies are anticipating and set up better, you can see I'm taking shots, we are going to get some damage on these tanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to flank these guys. Me, the Centurion, the T-43, everyone that's on the western side of the map, we're going to push forward. I'm going to go to the next set of bushes. You notice that the Su-122 44 was spotted. We're going to keep those TDs in the backfield spotted. Tanks like that. The SPGs will fire at them. The Centurion will fire at him. The T-43, you can see that the Waffenträger was spotted. So after we take those tanks out of the game, the Chiri was spotted, the Su-122 was killed, so he's already out of the game. After these tanks are out of the game, we're going to continue to advance forward. We're going to spot their SPGs and kill them. Took a 617 hit on that Waffenträger. And then we're going to get behind the enemy, and we're going to shoot at the enemy from behind, hopefully from a position where they can't see us. So the Lorraine got spotted on that shot. I'm not sure who spotted him. Must have been one of my allies. As you can see, I'm moving to a closer position. He's out of the game. We've got the SPIC. We got to spot that Waffenträger. This tank is a great tank. I love playing this tank. It's a Tier 7 WZ-131 Chinese tank. So if you like playing light tanks, I do recommend these tanks. So I'm watching the minimap to try and gauge when it's safe to advance to get close to these tanks so that we can start spotting them. For example, you're going to see that there's a Scorpion G. Oh, look at that. He's out in the open. And it's pretty safe for me to be in this position. I'm going to be watching his gun. You can see the Centurion and the T-43 are starting to make their advance north. You want to stay in the water. When you're in the water, you're at a very low point in the field, so it's going to be difficult for the enemy to hit you on the low ground. So I found some bushes where I can advance. If that Scorpion G gets spotted, he's going to be an easy target for me to fire at. So the Waffenträger is now out of the game. There's that Scorpion. He's quite far away. It will be very difficult for him to spot me, even if I'm firing my gun because of the distance. Scores 9-2. We're cleaning up on these guys. Now, even though he's unspotted, I'm still going to take shots at him. You can see that the SPIC is going to be shooting at the rear flank. You want to see where that SPIC is? He is right over there. He has shots on any tank that is in the middle of the hill. The T-43 is taking up a sniping position where the enemy was. I also have clear shots on the hill. Scores 12-4. I did 1,000 damage. Got 1 kill. Now we got 2 enemy tanks in the game. Telling my team that I think they did a good job. Now I'm just going to run in. I got mostly full health. I don't care if they shoot at me. Just try to do as much damage as I can. And that's the game. I did 1,400 damage, 840 spotting damage. And I've done this maneuver many times, and it's definitely an effective maneuver. This tank is a T-54 lightweight. This is a Russian Tier 9 light tank. The map is mines. Me and a large portion of my team, 4 or 5 allied tanks, we're going to head to the south, and we're going to get behind the enemy and we're going to start shooting at them from the rear. Now you notice that there's a bush here. This is a spot where you can go and you can park and turn on your binocs and spot enemy tanks, but the problem is you can't reach all the way down to the red line, so you might miss some tanks that are trying to come across. So what I do is I advance to the next section, try to stay close to these bushes so I can spot anyone that's coming across, and come out to here. You can see that I didn't spot anybody, so I kept on going. I'm going all the way to the red line, and I'm advancing south. You see there's 5 Allied tanks behind me. I know from playing this game that the best thing to do is to go all the way to the red line, or to go to this location right over here where this bush is, because you can hide in this bush and you can shoot at those tanks over there without being spotted. You can double bush. Now I do have a problem, which is that there is a T-26E4 tank that's right there, but I also have 5 Allied tanks over here up in these hills to back me up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that T-26E4 spotted, but I'm going to let my allies do as much damage to him as possible. Keep myself safe and protected. So you can see I have shots on the hill. Nobody went actually up into the hill. You'll notice that my allies are approaching my area, if you look on the mini-map. This enemy tank is not even turning around because I'm not spotted. He doesn't really know where I'm here. His ally doesn't know that we're here. He did too little too late. So we can look and see what my allies are doing. They're obviously doing some damage to the T-26E4. They are at the red line, which is the proper position to play on this map. Where this T-44 is not really that great of a position, but he does have shots from there, but it's not the ideal position, especially if you're by yourself. A lot of those tanks are at the edge of my rendering range. No, I'm sorry, not rendering range, but spotting distance. So you can see I got spotted. The enemy is starting to do something. They see that something is going on. They are coming down, but they are going to take damage if they stay in that position. You can see that that tank just took 533 damage. You do want to do this maneuver as quickly as you can in the game, because what will happen is that as time passes, there will be less and less enemy tanks trying to climb the hill. And the fewer that there are tanks there, the less targets you're going to have to shoot at. Now, because we know that there are enemy tanks literally on the other side of this rock, the T-28 prototype and another tank, Progetto, I'm going to go and spot them at some point for my team. So it looks like one of those tanks was taken out, and the T-28 prototype is running away. The score is 8-0. I only did 1,200 damage and 1,000 spotting damage, but we cleaned up. If you look, the western side of the map is completely controlled by allies. There's no enemy tanks on the western side of the map. It was because of our flanking maneuver. On the eastern side of the map is where all the enemy tanks are safe. But we could just as easily come up with a maneuver to clean up on that side of the map. Maybe we'll do that in a future video. Just got 500 spotting damage on that T-28 prototype. There is an SPG in the game, so we will need to go spot him also. Even though I know that I'm not going to penetrate his armor, but I still take the shot. And the reason why is, number one, you do want to practice. Number two, sometimes it actually does penetrate. And number three, you really want to keep the enemy on his toes. You don't want him to think that he controls the game. You want bullets pointing at him, even if they're ricocheting. We're obviously going to win this game But keep them on their toes. Keep shooting at those cupolas. Keep shooting at those tracks. It's part of the way to becoming a better player. Scores 10-0. Now, at this point in the game, if I live or if I die, we're probably going to win this game. So I don't care if they do any damage to me. I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to get my final damage in before these tanks are taken out of the game. So you can see I chose the wrong tank, and the tank that I chose had more hit points, but it died first. So my gun was not aimed at the proper tank, and I missed a shot, which would have been a kill shot. Score is 12-1. We're easily going to win this game. Now, even though it is the end of the game, I am now low on hit points. I could potentially be shot as a one-shot, so I'm using a different tactic. I am going to stall this Progetto, get him to have his attention on me, and wait for my allies to get around him or wait for him to expose himself. So I'm not going to fire my gun unless I got a clear shot. What I'm going to do is just annoy him and play with him. You can see that my ally took a shot and he fired. It's just a baiting technique. Okay, so that's 15-1. I did 1,457 damage, 1,700 spotting damage, and I got 1 kill. This tank is Light Vic. This is a British Tier 2 light tank, and the map is Mines. So I like to play the Tier 2 tanks, and the reason why is because sometimes they get a 5x bonus. It allows me to test out different tactics and strategies, and I like to play with the autoloaders, and I like to play with the tank destroyers in the lower tiers. And also I do the lower tier tanks. Usually my first games of the day, I play a couple Tier 2 games just to see how the internet connection is. When I was playing from South America, it was very important because the connection would go down all the time. So I needed to know if I had a good connection or not before I started using the personal reserves. So on this day, we got a good connection. I was able to make it to the south. The game, believe it or not, is very competitive at Tier 2. It's not easy. You know, many years ago, maybe it was easy to play a Tier 2 game, but now it's very, very competitive. These people are very good. There's a lot of players, like some of the top players play 20,000 battles, Tier 2 only. So you'll notice that I wasn't able to penetrate that tank. But it doesn't mean that you don't fire, because by shooting at him and him having incoming fire, it did cause him to reverse, which means that he's not as much of a threat to my allies. And it allows you to test different theories, like if it says that it's red, does it ever penetrate? Sometimes it does. Sometimes you get a lucky shot in, sometimes you don't. And you also learn a lot about armor. If you play Tier 2 with a well-armored tank, you can have really good games. There's definitely something to say about having strong armor, even in the higher tiers. There's a lot of tanks in the game, and by playing Tier 2, it helps you gauge knowing the difference between all these different tanks. For example, this M14/41 is a well-armored tank, but it doesn't look like it. And this other tank right over here is not a well-armored tank. So one of the reasons why I play Tier 2 is to help me decide the armor values of the tanks that I'm shooting against. You notice that I'm moving back and forth, and that is because I don't want him to hit me. I want to increase the chance that he's missing. And then I stop my tank to allow it to aim in a little bit more when I'm about ready to fire. I don't do it when it's reloaded. I do it a second before I'm fully reloaded, so that once I'm reloaded, I'm ready to fire. Now you'll notice that the first tank, which was the M14, was well armored, and the indicator said that I would not penetrate. And when I switched it to this other tank, it says that it should be easy to penetrate. So that's an example of how I'm testing the armor penetration. That you can see I will not be able to penetrate that tank. If I fire 20 shots, it might penetrate one. So now you'll see that there's an enemy tank, which is a medium 1, that's a potential threat to me. And I have to gauge how am I going to deal with him. So I'm coming up with a plan. I want him to come out more. One of his allies is shooting at me, which means I have to take action immediately. I cannot wait. You'll notice that when I went over that little hill, it threw my gun high up in the air, which means that I took the wrong path. I should have taken a path which is a little bit more to the left, where my tank would be more level, so I had the appropriate gun elevation. And they took me out of the game. This tank is a Sheridan. This is a Tier 10 American light tank. The map is Westfield. What I'm going to try in this game is I'm going to try and sneak behind enemy lines. And the reason why you sneak behind enemy lines has a lot to do with the penetration value of your gun. If you can't penetrate the front of enemy tanks, you got to hit them on the side or on the rear. I believe this only does 150 penetration. Yeah, 152. So I can't really penetrate a lot of tanks from the front, so I got to come up with a plan, use my speed, use my stealth, look for openings, be able to predict where the enemy is going, try and get behind them, look for an opportunity to get behind them. They're going to be behind the cliffs or the slopes. I'm pinging on the map. I must have seen a tree fall, so I'm pinging on the map to let my allies know that there's a vehicle there. But there's an easy way to get behind the enemy lines, and that is to go and stay low and head for the buildings near the base, and then head north again, beyond the back side of the hill. The other way is to climb the hill, look for some bushes, stay at the edge of the ridge, be as far away from the tanks in the south, far away from the tanks in the north. You'll notice that we haven't spotted enemy tanks in the middle of the map. Okay, so the FV215B just showed up. He would be a potential threat that would make it difficult for me to go upwards into the middle of the map, up the hill. We have spotted tanks in the south. I can move from bush to bush, keep on advancing. Now, I'm not getting spotted. I'm advancing and not getting spotted. Enemy tanks are going away from me. They're increasing their distance away from me. I'm staying close to the ridge. Going from bush to bush, turning on the binocs. Advancing to the next location. And one of the threats was just removed. The FV4005 could have potentially spotted me. He's now out of the game. Now I see this AMX-30B. He's pretty far away from me. We've got 3 enemy SPGs. 3 enemy SPGs means that there's more tanks that I can spot. There's an Object 268, which was spotted. However, my allies won in the north, which means that that Object 268 is going to be taken out of the game. But if I had gone up the hill, he probably would have spotted me. So now we've got 3 SPGs who are going to get spotted probably a little bit sooner than they thought. You got to get pretty close to those tanks when you fire the gun on the Sheridan, because the Sheridan doesn't aim very well. You'll notice that as I drove towards that tank, I tried to keep my tank straight, because when you rotate the hull, it changes the accuracy of your shot. So when you are approaching an SPG, you want to set up a route that's going to take you as straight as possible. Don't zigzag with this particular gun. The more you zig and the more you zag and the more you turn that hull, the less your accuracy is going to be. So I planned a route, I went straight directly towards him, fired the gun, and then I changed the direction I was driving in. Score is 11-6. Now, right now, you notice that as soon as he was spotted, I turned right. And the reason why is because I no longer want to head towards him. I now have the advantage where I spotted him and I don't want him to spot me. So by turning right, I keep him spotted and I decrease the chance he's going to spot me. Because there's a bush in the way, he's obviously not going to spot me through that bush. Now you'll notice that I'm going to a safe position so that they don't fire back at me. I have to reload. There's really little that I can do. I'm going to stay in these bushes over here. They're going over the crest of the hill, which means that they can't fire back at me anyway until I crest this hill. And I'm using the mini-map to try and predict where the 121 is. And the great thing about this game is, even though I didn't get the damage by firing my gun, I did get 184 spotting damage on that tank. That was just a wild shot, just taking a chance. Doesn't matter if he hits me. Although you do pay for repairs, I'm not worried about that. I have plenty of silver. I'm more concerned about keeping him spotted. Now, he was stunned, and when you're stunned, that's the time you want to go in and shoot at those tanks, because they're going to have less of a view range, and their accuracy is going to go down. Okay, so I did 650 damage and 3,294 spotting damage. But what's important is I also showed you that it is possible to sneak through. That is the path with the highest success rate that you're going to get to go in after those SPGs during the game. This tank is the AMX 1390. This is a French Tier 9 light tank. The map is Malinovka. I am going to get 2,600 spotting damage, but what's important is the technique that I'm going to use. This is going to be the first time that I'm trying this, but I'm going to show you a technique that you can use to get into the rear flank, to spot the enemy SPGs, to snipe at the enemy from behind. This is only testing, so I'm not going to do it properly, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it properly the next time. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just doing a spotting run. I'm coming over here, look at all those tanks that I spotted. There was no threat to me. They didn't expect me to do it. They didn't shoot at me. They didn't fire me. They didn't see me coming. I was able to spot all those enemy tanks. The mistake that I made was that this is an encounter game, and I was kind of confusing it. I was confusing the spawn positions with a regular battle. I didn't realize how close they were to the A7 and A8 area. I thought I was going to be spotting them in a different sector. So then I used the low ground to go back to safety, and I'm coming in for a second spotting run. But watch the way I do it, and we're going to talk about what I did right and what I did wrong. Now, obviously, they spotted me. Was a pure stroke of luck that their light tank was going off in that direction. I did get 1,500 spotting damage. It was 1,100 on that first spotting run, and I got 400 on that light tank. This T-34, he's going to be out of the game. What he tried to do is complete failure. Now, because I'm spotted, I'm heading back toward safety, which is Allied territory, and I'm going to turn around doing a handbrake turn. I'm going to go back to enemy territory. Now, we know where most of the enemy tanks are, and there's only a few out in the field, and there's going to be one SPG back there. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to rush behind enemy lines. What I should have done is, because this Progetto 46 was spotted, is wait for him to die, but I got a little bit cocky. And I was spotted. So now you see I'm rushing behind enemy lines. And what I'm doing is I'm going for the lowlands, but it's the wrong way to do it. And I'm going to explain to you the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to use this building to block these tanks from shooting at you. And the way you do it is when you come up over on this hill, you hang a sharp left to get behind this building. And then you start driving down the field. What's happening right here is I'm going in the wrong direction, which is going to allow those tanks behind me to take shots at me. Right now I'm looking for the lowland, but what I could have done was use that building. If you look on the mini-map, I have the pointer pointed to the building. you can use the mini-map to use the building to block those shots. So I took one shot from the SPG. I'm staying in the lowland. You'll see that the people up on the hill haven't hit me even once. There's a T-32 that hit me. I was able to make it all the way to the back. Took him out of the game. You can see that the enemy is chasing after me. And I was able to get 2,600 spotting damage. Now, the point of this game is that I am testing the tactic and the technique to use to get to this position. I'm going to show you, this is the first time I did it. I'm going to try it again in the future. I'm going to tell you right now that if you wait a little bit longer into the game, like more time elapsed, you're going to have higher chance of success. And if there's more SPGs, you're going to have a higher chance of success because more SPGs means less enemy tanks. Okay, let's move on to the next video. This tank is a T-54 lightweight. This is a Russian Tier 9 light tank. The map is Fisherman's Bay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak behind enemy lines. And there's different ways to do it. It's easier to do it from south going through north. I'm going to do it kind of going through the town. And I found a spot that if you can make it to it, it's a very powerful position because it allows you to spot the enemy team and it allows you to snipe on enemy tanks that are across the map. Now, I was spotted here, so I'm going to be waiting a moment to decide how I'm going to deal with being spotted. But because of the changes in the map design, people are not going through the town anymore. A lot more tanks are playing in the middle of the field. The reason why is because they're getting spotted on the way to town. Look at that VK4502B and watch what happens. He just took 800 damage and now he's dead. He's out of the game. So it's very dangerous for tanks to go to town and they're not doing it. And I waited a little bit and I said, okay, I'm going to go through the town. Normally, when you do this maneuver, you want to have a fast tank and you want to do it immediately at the start of the game. But watch what I'm going to do. It's going to be very interesting, and I'm going to find a very good position. The other thing you want to do is you want to know where you're going to. Look at my mini-map and look at where my allies are, the M53, the Tortoise, the Type 4 Heavy, and the Conway. The problem with heading north is that it's easy to get to that point on the map, but you're likely to find enemy tanks in those positions. And the key is, how do you get there without being spotted? And I'm going to show you that I'm able to get to the south without being spotted. However, it's the first time that I did this maneuver with this map change, so I'm going to have to show you the right way to do it, and of course you're going to see the wrong way to do it. So you notice that I've gotten to this position and I haven't been spotted. You always want to be as far left as possible to avoid being spotted, and then you just come to this bush. And if you can make it to this bush, which I did, without being spotted, look at what you have. You can snipe at the rear of these enemy tanks over here. His gun is not pointed at me. He's pointed in a different direction. And you can spot any artillery that's firing from over here in this lake area. The problem is when you get here, you have to know what to do. One thing that you can do is you're going to gauge on your map, do you think you can find a position from here where you can fire at those tanks? For example, that E50, there's a chance I could be spotted. But if he weren't there, I could easily fire at this WZ without being spotted. He's outside of my spotting range. So there will be cases where you can shoot at those tanks. The other thing is there a way that you can line up your tank? For example, you see this patch of bushes over here. If I can make it into this patch of bushes, I could easily snipe at those tanks in the midfield from the rear, and they'd have no idea. You'll notice that I can move forward into these bushes over here, and I can spot any tanks that are here in the backfield better than in the position that I am right now. So this is the position you want to get to, and ideally you want to make it into these bushes here without being spotted. But watch what happens. I'm here, I'm looking around, checking out what I'm seeing, getting some spotting damage. So I'm getting spotting damage by being in this position. And you can see that that enemy tank is concerned. He knows that there's something going on, and I advanced a little bit until I got to this position. And you'll notice it says that I spotted the Jag Tiger. But this is the problem that I made, of course, is that he may have also spotted me. I tried to track him, was unable to track him. So I just wanted to show you that this is one of the techniques that I'm going to be working on in the future. You're going to see future games where I'm going to come to this position, and I'm going to see how much spotting I can do on the tank's midfield. I'm going to see if I can make it to this sniping position and create havoc for the enemy team.